When it comes to video games, pretty much everyone knows the original Super Mario Bros. And when it comes to speedrunning, pretty much everyone is familiar with this classic, highly optimized run. The fact that you can beat this game in 5 minutes has basically spawned my entire career. A lot of you out there are very familiar with the any percent speedrun of this game. And yet, many of you actually don't know the true any percent run. The same can be said about a certain glitch in this game. This being perhaps the most famous game of all time, it has one of the most famous glitches in all of video games. The minus world. A lot of you out there are very familiar with this trick. And yet, many of you actually don't know the true minus world. I'm here to turn your world upside down today. The any percent speedrun of this game is not 5 minutes long. The minus world is not an endless water stage. Everything you know is wrong. Stick around for the history, technical details, and speedrun breakdown of Minus World Ending. Okay, first things first. We obviously have to talk about the minus world. What is it? Why does it exist? How do you get there? And what does minus world ending even mean? Probably for most of you, the existence of the minus world won't be new. It's one of the most famous glitches out there. It was even featured in issue number 3 of Nintendo Power. Let's see what it says. It tells us to break these 2 blocks, and then after many tries, Mario may go through the wall. Don't tell anyone, but I'm feeling like being a bit of a rebel today. I'm gonna break only one of the blocks, and I'm gonna go through the wall in only 1 try. Very good. But why is Mario able to go through the wall? Usually all the clips I've talked about in my videos require pushing left to get pulled in, doing some extra jumps to get in all the way, or something along those lines. That's clearly not happening here. You just go straight through. Well, the answer is pretty simple. See, it's all because Mario is on screen and his Y position is less than 207, so we start performing collision checks on Mario's head. His Y position is less than 32, and his head is touching a tile, and not colliding with a coin, and he's moving upwards, or downwards, doesn't really matter. Either way, we move on to the foot collision checks, and our Y position is good, and our feet aren't colliding with, well, anything, so we start doing side collision checks, and Y position is less than 32, and his bottom left side is not touching a tile, and his Y position is less than 32, yeah, and no, his bottom right side is not touching a tile, and done! Great, I'm sure we can move on from this now. Alright, in plain English, here's the way it works. Super Mario Bros., as you just saw, has a very sophisticated system of checks to decide whether you should interact with a wall or not. Shoutouts to Dan Salvato for this flowchart that he made. The reason this game's collision logic is so rigorous is to make things feel nice and smooth, and so collision isn't overbearing and annoying like some other Mario games that came out 30 years later. An example of this in SMB1 is when you're jumping upwards. You can clip the top corner of a block and keep going past it. It's kinda nice, you get up there smoothly instead of bonking the block when you just barely touched it. But because the developers' efforts were so great and complex to try and make the game play like this, sometimes there can be blind spots in the logic. Like with this example of jumping up past the corner of blocks, let's see what happens if we jump at the perfect height. You can jump high enough that you don't clip the corner, since the game thinks you're on your way to get up on top of the block, but you can still be just low enough that you don't get up on top, and you can clip inside it. The famous clip used to get to the minus world is another case like this. The game checks to see if you're at the top of the screen, usually called the HUD or status bar area. Mario can't really interact with anything up here. This can easily be seen with the vine in 4.2, which I'm sure some of you have jumped straight through the top of and probably fallen to your doom. I'm not sure why this check exists to disable collision at the top of the screen, since there's never really anything up here to interact with, but there's probably a good reason. Anyway, even if your head is high enough up here to have its collision disabled, your feet are lower down and could still hit things. There is, however, a really specific window you can be in, where your head is high enough to go through a block, but your feet aren't quite high enough to touch that block. So, you go straight through it. And once the left side of Mario's head or body is inside a wall, you're always free to continue running to the right, and no walls will stop you. This might seem weird, but it makes sense if you consider areas like this spot in 1-2. You don't want the player to get stuck inside the wall, so they're allowed to run out of it to the right. And yeah, that's the famous Minus World clip explained. Now that I've explained all of that, we actually don't need to do any of that at all. There are better options to get to the Minus World. but I wanted to explain it anyway, since I find it interesting, and this is such a famous trick. Plus, this type of clip where you can go through blocks near the top of the screen is useful in some other areas in speedruns. A type of clip that can be used much more often though is a crouch clip. This actually works the same way that wall jumps work. Walls are made up of a bunch of separate blocks, and you can land on top of these blocks very briefly before getting pushed out of the wall. If you crouch and then land on the block just below a ceiling, Mario will stand up. Now his head is inside the ceiling above him, and he's free to continue running inside the wall. This method of clipping is also a pretty common and well-known way to get to the minus world. But a lot of times I see people still break these bricks before doing it, and that is not necessary. That was only for the previous type of clip, so Mario could jump up high enough to get in the status bar area. This is a public service announcement. You don't have to break any of these bricks to do this type of clip. Okay? Great. Alright, should we finally get past this wall and move on to the warp zone? Let's consult Nintendo Power again to see what to do next. It says, quickly enter the left or right pipe. I think I'm gonna continue to be a rebel today, and slowly enter the middle pipe. Oh, World 5? That's weird. I'm sure a lot of you already knew about this, but for how famous this glitch is, a surprising number of people don't know that the middle pipe takes you to World 5. And yes, if we go in one of the side pipes, it does take us to World -1. Why does this happen? This is a good time to say that the minus world glitch as a whole has been explained several times over the years. I highly recommend giving this video by Displaced Gamers a watch to fully understand what's going on here. I was gonna go through some of this stuff, but honestly, there's not really a point when he's already done it beautifully. I will share tidbits that add new value to the conversation though. In the video, he talks about how the game erroneously sets this warp zone to act like the warp zone from the end of 4.2, until it has loaded in all the way. That is why the middle pipe sends you to World 5. That's what it does in the warp zone in 4.2. In fact, if you make the screen scroll as you're entering the glitched World 5 pipe, you can see a 5 appear above it, indicating that that's where it will send you. Oh, wait. If it has a 5 above it and it sends you to World 5, then these show nothing above them. They send you to World Nothing. World Nothing-1. That's why it's the minus world. It looks like it says World -1, but actually it's just Nothing-1. It's a blank space, or a blank character. We have something other than a number representing the world number. This reminds me of when you do the classic Koopa 1-up trick on a staircase, and then when you finish the level, you see your life counter has turned into complete nonsense. As you get lives, the game starts by counting with regular numbers, but after that it uses letters. And then after that, it starts using every tile at its disposal to represent your number of lives. Just like the letter A can represent a number, this little hill slope tile can also represent a number. And another one of these tiles in the game that can represent a number is the blank character. Every tile in the game has an associated value in memory. Here's a table of all of them in order. If we look through them, we'll find that the 36th one in here is the blank character. This character represents the number 36. That means the minus world is World 36. That's a powerful warp pipe, moving us forward 35 worlds. So, great, we have a little trick here that lets us make it to World 36. Our reward for making it here is a copy of level 7-2, which 7.2 is already a copy of 2-2, so that's not really that exciting. If you use hacks or cheats to go to other worlds beyond World 8, you can get all sorts of crazy looking levels. Unfortunately, the one glitched world we can access without cheats is actually a pretty boring one. There was a chance we could have gotten something really cool for this world. And we did, on the Famicom Disk System version. There are a lot of different versions of Super Mario Bros. Most of them are the exact same game, just packaged differently. Even in the ones where there are multiple games on one cartridge, the game itself hasn't been altered in any way, and the minus world is just the same. But there is one version, the Famicom Disk System version, that is different. Hello friends, I'm here to teach you about the Famicom Disk System. Please understand. It's really important to me that you understand what a Famicom Disk System is. please don't walk away from this video thinking an FDS is the same thing as a Famicom. Okay, this is an NES, and this is a Famicom. You'll notice they're pretty much the same. There are some minor differences between NES and Famicom, and there are some different models of NES and Famicom out there, but generally speaking, anything in the family computer family of systems is pretty much the same thing on the inside. Now this beautiful creature is a Famicom disk system, and this is Super Mario Bros. The Famicom Disk System, or FDS, is not a standalone console. It is nothing without a Famicom or NES to connect to. We gotta take this thing and plug it into the console, and then, I don't have enough hands for this and I'll try not to drop my consoles, but you gotta take the cord that's coming out the back and then plug it into the FDS. And that's how you play games off of an FDS, okay? And then you put the Famicom Disk System disc in the front of the Famicom Disk System, okay? Famicom Disk System, okay? Famicom, FDS, Famicom Disk System, Famicom Disk System. Okay, now that we're all on the same page about the different consoles this game can be played on, let's talk about the Minus World. They rearranged memory a little bit when they ported the game over from this to this, and the changes that they made affected the Minus World. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at the Minus World on the FDS version. Ooh, now this is more like it. This is the level layout of 1-3, but it's certainly a glitched world. Honestly, it seems like just a bunch of random stuff going on in here. Weird colors, weird enemies, swimming in the air. Why is it like this? Well, once again, another channel out there has already done a great job of explaining this part. Retro Game Mechanics Explained has basically a whole series on glitched worlds in this game, and if you want to know exactly why you're seeing what you're seeing here, that's definitely the place to go. One question I will answer though is one I hear asked a lot. Why do these levels exist at all? How can there be levels in a game that the developers didn't make? Well, the answer to that is that the developers did make them. They just weren't supposed to be levels. That might sound weird, but it should make sense in a minute. Let's go back to the weird life counter from earlier. These tiles are supposed to be in the game, right? They're just not really supposed to be used to represent your life count. The Minus World is like that. It's data in the game, but it's not supposed to be used to generate levels. Everything in computers is just numbers at the end of the day. There's no letters, there's no pictures, only numbers. The NES can use numbers ranging from 0 to 255, and we just assign one of these numbers to everything in the game. This works great when the right things are interpreted the right way. For example, if we interpret each of these numbers on screen as letters and go and grab the corresponding letter for each of these values, they can form an intelligible word. Or, if each one of these numbers represented the color of a pixel to draw on screen, they can turn into a pretty picture. But things get weird if you try to interpret a picture as words, or words as a picture. If you start to look for things out of bounds from where you would normally look, things start to seem very random. This next part will be oversimplified a bit and not perfectly accurate, but it'll give you the general concept. Once again, I'll reiterate that everything is just a bunch of numbers in memory. Let's say this is what the game's memory looks like. You'll have stuff chunked together, like all the graphics data, all the sound and music data, and so on. One of these chunks is all of the levels. This isn't exactly how it actually is in-game, but for the sake of demonstration, let's say you've got all the worlds stored here in order, from 1 to 8. Whenever you're about to play a level, the game will check the level number you're going to play, and that'll tell it where to look to find the right level data to load in. But now let's say you're playing an unusual level. Something like, I don't know, World 36-1. Now the game is checking way outside of where it normally does to generate these levels. This memory is not meant to be interpreted as levels, but when it is, it looks like this. In the original version of the game, whatever memory it looked at to load up World 36 just so happened to be like, alright, boot up 7-2. But you can see it doesn't have the right memory in place to set up this pipe exit properly. That's why it just loops forever. Thankfully, we got one version of this game with memory organized a little differently, so when the game looks to find World 36, it finds something completely different and way more interesting. We get the 1-3 level layout, but with different colors and with weird enemies everywhere. This is a lot of fun to explore, and can be a cool new feature in the game to experience after all these years. Miyamoto, one of the creators of this game, said it himself. It's a bug, yes, but it's not like it crashes the game, so it's really kind of a feature too. Wiser words have never been spoken. Oh. Bad news, Miyamoto-san. For the most part, the Minus World is stable, but if you kill this Bowser, the game will most likely crash. Sometimes it doesn't though, and then you get a bunch of fireworks going off near the end of the level, so that's fun. Hey, if the creators really felt like the Minus World was just a cool feature, why did they remove these two blocks in Versus Super Mario Bros., the arcade version of the game? They clearly didn't want us to clip through the wall right here. But don't worry, we can continue our rebellious ways. There are still several other methods to reach the warp zone before it loads. The arcade version is quite a bit different from the original game, so we can expect memory to be different, and we'll probably find a different Minus World. Well, it's not the same, but it's just another water level that loops forever. Boring. From here on out, we'll stick to talking about the Minus World on the FDS version. Also a water level, but much more interesting. And not only because it's more unique, but also because it doesn't loop. That's right, there's more than just one level in this Minus World. There's a flagpole at the end of the stage, which means we can keep going. Anytime you finish a stage with a flagpole, it'll bring the level counter up by 1. Whereas if you finish a stage by grabbing an axe, it brings the world counter up by 1. If you could grab an axe in 1-1, you'd go straight to 2-1. Or if there was a flagpole in 8-4, it would bring you to 8-5. In the case of this level, -1, there is a flagpole to use, so that brings us to -2. This stage happens to be a copy of 7-3, kind of similar to the original Minus World being a copy of 7-2. This seems like a boring outcome, but it's actually very interesting for reasons I'll talk about later. For now, let's grab the flagpole at the end and see what -3 looks like. Ooh, nice. This is a little more interesting. This is the level layout of 4-4, but underground instead of using the castle theme. And there are flying blue bloopers. Bloopers, if you will. As you might expect, we can find an axe at the end of this stage and finish the world. Our princess is in another castle. No, I'm pretty sure I just saw her. She's floating around in the air back there. Anyway, it's been fun learning about this different version of the Minus World. But what does this have to do with speedrunning? Well, watch this. Do you understand the significance of what just happened? Okay, how about now? I mean, look, there's a 2 at the top of the screen. Come on. We have obviously just beaten the game. When you beat the game normally, Peach says push button B to select a world. Pushing B brings you back to the title screen, and from there you can push button B some more to start on any world you want. We just saw the same outcome happen after beating the Minus World. Why? Well, the game figures you've beaten the game when you touch the axe in World 8. Or any world after that. If you touch the axe in World 8 or higher, then the game is considered beaten. We just beat World 36, which is greater than 8. So I guess we just saved the Mushroom Kingdom. We beat the game. Okay, obviously we didn't. But this is kind of a cool secret ending hidden in the game. It would make for a fun speedrun category, in addition to the regular way to beat the game. We could call it something like Minus World Ending. Alright, let's finally talk about the Minus World Ending speedrun. In some ways, you could consider this an any % completion of the game, since as far as the game knows, we did beat it. But we all know that we didn't really beat it. One interesting idea though is using the Minus World to be able to select World 8 from the title screen, and maybe you could get the actual ending faster that way. But you reach World 8 about 35 seconds slower doing that, which I think is probably a good thing in the end. The minus world can just be its own fun, separate side category. Okay, time for the speedrun breakdown. Let's first notice that this category is half as long as regular SMB1 any%, so it shouldn't be a surprise when I say that this run is even more optimized than the regular 454 run. Shorter runs are naturally easier to optimize, but we still have to go for some insane stuff to squeeze out all the possible time there is to save in this category. You'll see what I mean later. Okay, starting the run off, 1-1 is the same as always. You take the pipe, you do a flagpole glitch. I've shown this a bunch of times for other categories. 1-2 is almost the same. The fastest way to get to the minus world is the same pipe clip that's used in any%. But things get different once we get to the warp zone. In the any% run, we actually go to the right side of the warp zone and then back to the left. If you've ever seen that and wondered why, now you know. You have to do that so you don't go to the minus world. But in the minus world ending speedrun, that's of course where we want to go. We can run out of the wall and just hold down to go straight in. There's only one frame to spare on the frame rule here, so you need a very good clip to make sure that you don't lose time. In the earlier days of minus world ending speedruns, people used to get a mushroom and do the more traditional method of getting to the minus world. But modern runs are matching the tasks here. Okay, now for the fun part. Let's talk about the levels that are unique to this category. In general, -1 isn't a hard stage. You just swim to the right. There's not really much optimization to do here other than don't hit a wall. I will say, this category has us pretty well ignoring Peach, going off on our own quest instead of saving her from 8-4. So you gotta make sure to give her some attention while you're here. Oh, right on the lips. When we get to the flagpole, we have a rare opportunity. It's not often you come to a flagpole while still underwater. We get to do a very special trick here. But first, you'll notice there's actually not a flag on this flagpole. For a long time, I just thought there was no flag because it's a glitched world or it's underwater or something. But this is just a genuine flag despawn. If you want to know exactly how flag despawns work in this game, watch this video I made which talks all about them. Part of that video explains how the flag will despawn if you have 5 sprites loaded when you get to the end of the level. But I only see one sprite here at the end of this level, the Koopa. Why is the flag despawning? This flag actually despawns because Peach stays in memory even after she goes off screen. And so does the other Peach. And Bowser is made up of 2 parts which both stay in memory. So those 4 sprite slots plus this Koopa adds up to 5. Thanks to the flag despawning, we have a faster flagpole than we usually would. But it's actually still not fast enough for our taste. If you've seen enough of my videos, you'll be familiar with full flagpole glitch. It's what happens when you can grab the flag from so low that you don't even make it up onto the block. Normally the timer countdown starts from Mario walking over to the castle, running into this solid block, and then once he does, it starts. Which, by the way, if you grab the very top of the flagpole in -1, you'll overshoot the solid block, and yeah. Okay, but anyway, we usually do full flagpole glitch by clipping in the ground or getting a bounce off of an enemy, which lets you grab the flag at a lower height than you normally can. Well, we're in an underwater level right now, and swimming lets us grab the flag lower than jumping does. Boom! Full flagpole glitch is possible here, with a frame-perfect swim right next to the flagpole. Runners also have to make sure they don't land on the ground too early here, because as soon as you touch down, you'll start losing speed. And if you lose even a single frame on this level, the timer will tick down to 233, and that will make 3 fireworks go off. Alright, that's it for -1. A very unique level, with a very unique opportunity to do full flagpole glitch. Now let's talk about -2, a less unique level. This level is already in the game twice, in 2-3 and 7-3. The difference between them is 7-3 does have a few extra Koopa enemies and more jumping Cheeps, and that's the version of the level we have here in -2. It's actually a really good thing that we have more jumping Cheeps. See, there's another unique opportunity for a trick on this stage, but it's incredibly hard. This is a trick that hasn't been implemented at all into the warpless category of the game, even though that category is very optimized in its own right. But that category is 19 minutes long with 32 levels. This category is 2.5 minutes long with only 5 levels, so we can afford to go all out. And in -2, that means doing another full flagpole glitch. If you watch the warpless tasks of this game, you'll see this type of trick on half the flagpoles in the run. There are actually a lot of opportunities for it, but most of them are so hard. We've been able to do them with bullet bills for years. But any of this type where you clip into the ground, those were not happening. That is, until 2019. Around that time, the leaderboard for this category was kind of stagnating, you could say. We needed some new innovations. That's when a player named Merrick decided to push the boundaries of what was humanly possible. He wanted to know if this floor clip, which the task does, could be executed by a human. So he set out looking for a setup, a consistent way to make it happen. For it to work, you need a Cheep Cheep to be in the perfect spot, and Mario to be in the perfect spot. The first of these is easily solved by waiting on the title screen. You can manipulate which patterns you get by waiting different amounts of time on the title screen before starting the run. Merrick found the right amount of time to delay before booting the game up, and that part of the puzzle was solved. But that was the easy part. Even with the perfect Cheep Cheep pattern, you still need to slow down a bit to wait for the Cheep to get into the right spot. How do you slow down a consistent amount and get perfect positioning? The solution was to have Mario stop running and instead walk for a specific amount of time. But it all has to be perfect. The inputs are going to be really precise here. For the setup, you had to jump on this exact frame, jump for exactly 6 frames, walk for a little while after you land on the ground, and then push B to start running again on this exact frame. Now everything is in position for the clip. And here's where the hard part starts. There are a few different sets of inputs to do this clip, but basically any approach will require you at one point to switch from holding right to holding left in just one frame. That is really hard to do, especially when it's just one piece of several moving parts that all have to line up here. Merrick wanted to pull it off though, so he went to work practicing it. Eventually, he managed to get the clip from a save state. And then he managed to get it playing all the way from the start of the level. And at one point, he even managed to get it in a full game run. Unfortunately, in the run where he got the clip, he missed the full flagpole glitch. See, even after you get in the ground, you're not out of the woods. The jump to the flagpole is precise too. When you get near the flagpole, you need to let go of B to slow down to walking speed, so you can do a smaller jump than you would at running speed. Then, you need to do a frame-perfect one-frame jump. As in, you only have a one-frame window to press jump, and you need to only press jump for one frame. You basically have to flick the button to get the tiniest jump possible, and that jump has to be timed perfectly. As you can imagine, this all makes for a very hard trick, even by this game's standards. A little later down the road, a runner named Kriller came along and was helping improve setups for a lot of tricks in this game. He managed to find a new setup for this trick that didn't have the awkward, exactly 6-frame jump in it. But it still wasn't easy, and there's no way to get around the hardest part here, where you have to switch from right to left in one frame. These developments for this trick all went down a few years ago, and to this day, only 2 people have successfully utilized this trick in a run. Miniland with a 231.4, and Nifsky with a 230.2. This is the most optimized category in Super Mario Bros., and he still has first place by over a second. It must be a pretty amazing speedrun. Let's now talk about what makes Nifsky's run the world record run. The answer has something to do with -3. -3 has a really interesting history and influence on the speedrun. Depending on when you look in history, this was either a hard level, a completely trivial level, or once again, a very hard level. This stage, as I mentioned earlier, is a copy of 4-4, but underground. Where things get interesting though, is over here. 4-4 is supposed to be a maze. If you don't take the right path, you get stuck in a loop until you find the correct way out. You have to go on the bottom path, and when you do, you can see this on the paths above. A walled off area which you could never normally access because of the looping maze mechanic. Well, in the -3 version of this level, there aren't any of these loops in place. You can take whatever path you want. That means you can end up here if you take the top paths. Now, what this should mean is that we have to go the bottom path. What it actually means, though, is that we have a choice to go the top path and still make progress through the level. If we can get through this wall, it would be faster than spending time to go down to the bottom path. A while back, I mentioned that in the early days of this category, people would get the mushroom to get to the minus world. Now, if you have the mushroom and you make it here as Big Mario, you can do the same type of crouch jump clip you used to get to the minus world to get up here in -3. Then you can run over the top of the maze and beat the stage faster. This was a big trick in the run back then. Once people started going for the harder Small Mario clip to get to the minus world, they couldn't do the clip in -3 anymore. 1-2 got a lot harder, but -3 was now basically free. The final time you finished the run at was essentially just determined by what frame rule you got to -3 on. If you got there on a new fastest frame rule by adding an extra flagpole glitch or something, it was pretty much a guaranteed new PB or world record. Most of the time. People started tying each other a bunch in this category because of how straightforward this level was. We needed a solution, and thankfully, there was one. I know I've already shown multiple clips as Small Mario in this video, so what's the big deal with this one? I mean, you had to do a clip to get to the minus world as Small Mario in the first place, just do it again. Well, we've got a different situation on our hands this time around. For clipping in general, you want to get as far in as you can during your jump. Usually you get all of the way in, or most of the way in, and then do a couple jumps to make it the rest of the way. But with this ceiling right above us in -3, we really can't jump at the wall from a very good angle. You can't get very far in on your initial jump. But you can get just barely far enough in to start clipping. And then 4 more jumps from there will finish it off. This trick is hard, but it's a really good thing that it's possible. Otherwise, we'd inevitably get like 10 people tied for the world record eventually, and it would be really lame. In this same fashion, we are really lucky that 8-4 in the regular any % run is such an interesting and difficult to optimize level. It would have been really boring if everyone constantly tied each other there. And if it was like any other castle stage in the game, that's what would have happened. Instead, we got a level that made for a really interesting speedrun. It's almost like it was meant to be. Alright, everything we've covered so far is the secret to success in minus world ending. This is a classic hyper-optimized category where there's a hard trick in every level. And each improvement is just adding one extra trick into an otherwise already perfect run. Back in the day, people got the mushroom and tried to get the minus world clip first try. They do the -1 full flagpole glitch and the big Mario clip in -3. Later, we started going for the small Mario clip in 1-2. Skipping the mushroom saved so much time that it was significantly faster even without the -3 clip. And from there, you could add in flagpole glitches to save a frame rule at a time. But at some point, you were out of frame rules to save, and you had to add in the -3 clip. But that wall clip saves more time than the flagpole glitches do, so you could afford to take them out and still get a PB using the clip. Once we had all the flagpole glitches and the -3 clip, the category was nearing its end. That is, until people like Merrick, Nifsky, and Miniland came along and started doing the -2 floor clip for a full flagpole glitch. That trick saved so much time that Miniland skipped 1-1 flagpole glitch and the clip in -3, and it's still good for second place. But first place, that's the crazy one. The one and only 230 on the leaderboard. This run by Nifsky does flagpole glitch in 1-1, fast small Mario clip in 1-2, fast full flagpole glitch in -1, perfect floor clip and full flagpole glitch in -2, and the clip in -3. And even that wasn't good enough for Nifsky. His first run that got all of the tricks did the final clip just a little bit slow. He was so close to 230.3, so he kept going. That same day, he got to -3 again and had a really nice clip this time. That got him to 230.3, which was really satisfying. But again, now it's so close to 230.2. So a year later, he came back, this time doing a fast acceleration trick at the start of -3. He nailed that, plus had the best clip in any minus world ending run. And that lands the world record today at 230.219. Again, it's so close to 230.1 now. But don't worry, it doesn't go lower than 230.1. Nifsky's record is 7 frames from perfection. 230.103 will be the best time that someone can ever get. For that, you need a crazy double fast acceleration at the start, and you need a different approach to the clip, which is harder and saves 2 frames. You need more complex inputs while clipping into the wall. You need to jump frame perfectly on every jump, and then you need to hold right at the perfect moment once inside. Squeezing every frame out of this level will not be easy. Nifsky's confident that a 230.1 will happen, but a perfect 230.1? Well, we're not really sure at this point. Maybe someday. After all, for a game as solved as Super Mario Bros., this game still continues to be full of surprises. Thanks for watching, and subscribe if you enjoyed.